Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 808. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camber. You know I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to cover some Formula One news and stuff. But before doing that, of course, I typically have to introduce my co-host tonight. You know who my co-host is. You know her, you love her all the way on the right coast of this nation, nestled in our nation's capital, plying her skills as a master statistician and genius on survey. What is it called? Surveyology. Actually, sociology. She covers all the gambits, including cats. You know her, you love her, the lovely, the redoubtable. Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And for those of you on YouTube, watching us on YouTube, which cat is this?
It's Ziggy.
This is Ziggy. It's in Grace's lap.
Always.
So if you're listening to the podcast, you want to see one of Grace's cats, you got to go to the YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, because that's
hit the like and the bell icon, apparently.
That's right. Subscribe. We'll put some links
Subscribe. We'll put some links below, and then hit the bell icon, you know.
That's right. No, I'm sure somebody else will show up.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping a show will show up.
Whatever. We just do something for some time and people listen to it and it's fine. And
why not?
We just keep showing up. We've been doing it for, as long as Enzo Truly's been alive. It's fine.
We have been doing this for as long as Enzo Truly's been on the planet.
I just want to add that, I think everybody, right, as you get older, right, because especially with athletes, because athletes continue to stay in their 20s and you continue to move out of your 20s, right? And so there comes that point, I remember when, Lando Norris, a couple years ago went to the MotoGP race at Silverstone. He was, getting to meet Valley and that was really great. And Rossi goes, "You could be my child." Right. You could be his child, right? And so you have these moments as you go through life as you get older. But learning that Jarno Trulli's son, Enzo, we've been doing this podcast longer than he's been on the earth, really stuck some dagger into my how old am I kind of. I was not ready for that.
We've been doing this a long time, haven't we?
I know. I was, I'm fine with it. Because you do the when Lando Norris was born, I had a job. That kind of stuff, happens. Or, people reference things, current events or something. You're like, "Oh, yeah, I remember that. What happened?" I was like, "Oh, I was 8." I'm like, "Oh, I was on my third job." But our podcast is older than his son is, was like, whew.
Right.
I wasn't ready for that one.
Paul was already graduating from college when I was born.
Right. See, I don't know.
Paul likes to brag I'm a few months older than him. Not by much.
That's right. So it's always fun. That joy continues to happen again.
It does.
And I always wonder too, because it always seems so weird to me, because I think of somebody like LeBron James seems like such an adult and I never feel like an adult, and he's so much younger than I am.
Yeah.
Not so much younger, but younger than I am.
I know. Yeah, it's funny. It's like
adult.
people talking about, Lewis extended a contract, racing in his 40s, and he's like 40. He's like, he's young.
Yeah, I will. I've worked past that. But anyway, I just think that always kind of is like, oh, right. Or that, like Joanne Zarco, the MotoGP rider. Man, that guy looks old. He is also a lot younger than I am. I'm like, who's seen them things?
Right. It's funny. Well, hey, Grace, I got to thinking about it. I was going to talk about politics and election time. It's midterm election time here in America. And as usual, there's no shortage of political commercials on TV and radio and online.
Tell me about it.
And one of the legacy marketing efforts, Grace, by all campaigns is the time-tested, good old-fashioned robocalls. You getting those now? You're getting the robocalls. I'm still getting robocalls out here in the woods.
Wow.
And you get these during the election time. And how they've changed over the years. I mean, it used to be you'd get a robocall endorsing a candidate, saying, "Hey, please vote for," but not anymore. Now it's just downright nasty hit pieces. You know how they go. I mean, it would be like, it's a robocall. So you'd answer your hello and they go, "Hello, Did you know that Grace used her office to demand higher speed limits on the Beltway, costing taxpayers millions in new signage and putting young children at risk? That's why Paul is running for governor. His record of safe driving and proper speed limit protocol is one we can all get behind. We can't afford 4 years of Grace's reckless spending, and we can't afford to gamble with our children's lives. Vote for Paul on Tuesday, right? It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I am originally from Pennsylvania, so I am all too familiar with how terrible this situation is. And it still is. Like, we were in Pennsylvania visiting my family this past weekend. It was just like, oh, I have nothing to complain about. I forgot. I mean, we do. I mean, being in the like DC, Maryland, Virginia area, we get a lot of Virginia's ads, right? But Maryland, there's just not as much of a competition for votes the same way there is in Virginia and certainly Pennsylvania. I'm like, oh God, I forgot. I'm never going to come back until after elections are over.
Oh, the robocalls are just so nasty now. It's just like instant hit pieces, and it doesn't matter what political party you are. They're just all instant hit pieces. And, I kept thinking, why do they still do these? And does anyone honestly think that you change your mind when you get a robocall? Really? Grace did that? It's weird, right? But here's the thing.
Okay, I'll just say that, first of all, that has never stopped guys from having terrible pickup lines. The fact that things don't work has never stopped guys from saying things that they do. So I'm just putting that out there. As a sociologist, often in my single days, right? Guys will say stuff and you're like, wait a minute, has that ever worked?
Does that work?
What kind of lady goes, oh, you're right, I totally go home with that? Like, I don't know. So it's the same thing. Like, there's a part of me that's like, you must think this works. I mean, I do think none of it gets tested anymore, right? So that's the other thing that's changed. It used to be that you would do focus groups. And so we bring in a bunch of Todds and a bunch of Pauls and a bunch of Graces. And we'd say, which message do you like better? Nobody does that anymore. They've cut that out. They just put it out there. And they try to get it in as quick as possible because they know you're going to hang up. If you answer the phone, who answers the phone? But anyway, if I don't recognize you, I don't answer, leave a message. But anyway, they know they have to get it out there so fast because you're going, oh, that's great, hanging up that phone, right? So they just jam as much of that crap up front as possible.
I know. It's crazy.
I get a lot of text messages, which I guess is like a robocall. And I'm just like, spam. Why are you, what is this? Jibber jabber. But
man, it's crazy.
It is.
This cup of Earl Grey is astoundingly good.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm drinking orange juice tonight. I don't know.
Oh, good for you.
Feeling the
Do you remember doing the podcast when you used to drink wine and I'd have like a beer or something? And boy, those days are gone. That's how long we've been doing this podcast.
Usually I have wine. That's still true.
Now you're drinking orange juice, and I'm drinking like Metamucil or something over here. This is terrible, Greg.
That was earlier in the day. You can't drink that this close to bed. What are you talking about?
It's terrible. So I got to thinking about this whole robocall thing, and I thought, and it hit me like a 2-ton heavy thing, and I was thinking, wait a minute, this would be a great move for F1 teams and F1 to use robocalls to gin up support for their teams or the series, because now if everyone's just going to leave the future of the sport to the court of public whim, well, then why not put these together? And Grace, I've taken the liberty of creating a couple F1 related robocalls. Are you ready to hear these?
Well, Christian Horner's, he has to be wearing his glasses, because I still think out of his little, hey, we didn't meet the cost gap punishment talk. The fact that we've never seen him with glasses and all of a sudden he's like, hold on.
Hold on. Yes.
This is Christian Horner. I'm wearing glasses right now, so you know that I'm serious about this conversation.
Serious. Yes. So I put together 2 robocalls, and, being that they're all nasty and stuff now, I don't want to, depart from the whole vibe. So here we go. So imagine all F1 fans would get a call and they would hear this.
Hello. Did you know that Lewis Hamilton is an unworthy champion because he had such a dominant car for 8 years and he only had to beat an inferior teammate?
See? That's a good robocall. Or if you're in the other camp, maybe this is the robocall you would get.
Hello. Did you know that Max Verstappen and his handlers at Red Bull Racing cheated their way to the 2021 and 2022 World Championships by overspending their competitors?
See? I think it would work, Grace. I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
I hope that first one, the first response is, well, this is Valtteri Bottas, and I don't think that was true at all.
Right.
Excuse me.
Right, but I'm not an inferior teammate. I won races, like 10 of them or something, you know?
Right.
Yeah, come on.
Step it back.
But see, that's how nasty they got. So there you go, F1. You know, going along with the whole election time, midterms, nasty robocalls. Why should American citizens be the only ones subjected to nasty robocalls when you could have all of Formula One fans out there getting these robocalls? I'm all for it.
I don't think we're the only country that has a lockdown on terrible political ads.
Yeah, probably not.
I'm just going to put that out there. I'm pretty sure other countries suffer from that too.
I'm pretty sure too. All right. Hey, Grace, are you ready for a soliloquy?
Oh, is it time for Todd to read to us? Oh, those are my favorite.
I know. Here's the whole reason. I'm not trying to be heavy-handed. Well, it probably will come across that way. I don't mean to be, but I got to be honest with you, man. The last 2 weeks, it's just, I've been sent hate grams and nasty grams and people taking a club to me over this whole Red Bull thing and cost cap and it's crazy. And it's it comes with the territory. That's fine. I'm not complaining about it, but it did make me think about it. And I was just sitting here. I was this weekend, and I was going to work on podcast notes, and then I got on a rant or a soliloquy, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to share some thoughts about the whole damn thing, the whole nutshell. All right. So, and you'll know this because you were around for a lot of this. So, from flexi floors to water tanks to lead shot ballast to the fan car, flexi wings, J dampers, dual diffusers, F ducts, oil burning, frick, DOS, outright espionage, Crashgate, and Spankgate, F1 has had a host of controversies, cheats, and politics along the way. It has always had those. It had them long before you became a fan of Formula One, and it has been here for a long time. All right. They call Formula One the Piranha Club for a reason. Now, that may not be a term you're familiar with, but that's what they used to call it. It was called the Piranha Club. It's no place for the weak of heart or timid viewer. It's a multi-million-dollar industry with everything from pride, ego, glory, glamour, lifestyle, and money on the line, right? It's like the Ring of Power, but then something happened the ring did not intend, which was F1 became a lockdown favorite to watch on Netflix. And with it, it brought a throng of generalist sports fans who brought their social media outrage with them. It was one of the last global sports that hadn't been beaten into submission for its excess and immoral attachment and respect for its bloody and archaic past. And so everybody was just having a grand time, teeing off on Formula One. Now, having watched Formula One since 1972, I started a website and a podcast in 2005 because I saw veteran fans, and this is a true story. This is the whole reason Grace and I met each other. So I saw all these, I was going to all these forums and other, websites, autosport.com and all that stuff. And I saw all these veterans just berating new fans. I mean, shaming them and treating them in a really vile manner. And I felt that there was really no reason for them to be F1 gatekeepers, if I'm honest. Why would they be an F1 gatekeeper of a sport that the world just needed to know more about in order to become F1 fans? So trolling them, in my mind, was not good business, right? So my goal was to create a safe harbor for new fans and veterans to engage and to help each other appreciate and learn more about the sport and love the sport more, right? And I carried a lot of water for F1 over here in the U.S. And even Bernie Ecclestone himself knew it and allowed me to continue with his personal blessing, I might add. He appreciated what we were doing here in the U.S. on their behalf for all those years. But after the last 3 or 4 weeks, things have changed. And I now find that the website has become a safe harbor for veteran fans to spare them the derision, bile, vitriol of all of these new fans. It's almost like a place where we still, it is a place where we still speak with reverence to the likes of, Jim Clark, Jochen Rindt, Sterling Moss, Jackie Stewart, Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, Nigel Mansell, Bruce McLaren, Phil Hill, Alberto Ascari, Tazio Nuvolari, Ronnie Peterson, that make Paul happy, Jackie Ickx, Patrick DePaulier, Maston Gregory, Ken Tyrrell, Colin Chapman, Ron Dennis, Enzo Ferrari, Fangio, Moss, Rosberg, Villeneuve, Scheckter, Andretti, Rodriguez, Hawthorne, Lauda, Surtees, Schumacher, Ecclestone, Mosley, and Bellest, and Charlie Whiting, and Sid Watkins, just to name a few. We still speak of all of that history, all of that legacy. We respect it for the era that it was in, and we respect it for the history of the sport. For all these years, I've felt that F1 doesn't and shouldn't have a gatekeeper or need gatekeepers. But watching the current situation and being accused of this, I am perfectly fine being a gatekeeper if that's what that means. If you're new to F1 and you have no idea who Jochen Rindt is or Wolfgang von Trips or Nuvolari, then Google it, all right? Because it just... To be an F1 fan is to understand a lot more than just the outrage you may feel about one decision or another. Maybe I can draw a parallel that might make more sense to our British listeners and friends. I know nothing about the history or legacy of Premier League football. And if I came at the fans of the Spurs, for example, or West Ham fans, with all kinds of hate, derision, accusations, innuendos, and completely ignored their history, it would be offensive to say the least. I mean, what if I called Manchester United Man U, right? To fully understand and be a fan of the Premier League, the least I could do is learn something about it before pontificating as if I'm in full command of the sport, its workings, and what it needs to do going forward to match my either political, moral, or social mores, no matter how important those may or may not be. I understand that. But the sheer weight of Premier League's history trumps anything I would add to its going forward success. That's why I still have no idea which team is, quote, my team, because I just don't know the history well enough to know where I resonate. Is it Arsenal, West Ham, like Paul, Fulham, Newcastle? I don't know. I'm still not sure. And ultimately, what I end up doing is I reach out to British friends and listeners. I try to learn and respect the clubs for what they represent, where they've been in history, their success, their tragedies, and what each team's fans are like, so I get a better understanding of what the series is like and where each team might resonate, whether I'm a fan or not a fan, etc. And, that used to be that way, when Grace came to Formula One, right? She gravitated to McLaren. McLaren became her team as she learned more about McLaren, me, Ferrari, Sadly, it's just, we seemingly have very little of that in F1 these days. And the entire reason I started the website was to provide a place for new fans to engage and learn, but apparently not many of them are interested. I had a new fan this past week tell me to shut up, that I didn't know anything about F1, and I needed to shut up and learn something before I talked about it, right? I mean, it was a charming DM, and I responded to him in kind, and I just asked him if the 1972 Monaco Grand Prix was dry or wet. He never answered me on that one. You can Google that, by the way. It was wet. So this whole shift has just been odd to me to watch, and I know that there's been there's some battles that don't involve me. I remember some back and forth. Will Buxton was, not being mean, but I think he was sort of trying to correct a few folks about being a gatekeeper for F1 and welcoming all fans. And of course you would, right? Because you want the sport to grow. And all of those new fans from Netflix, absolutely you want them as fans of Formula One for all the right reasons, right? But it's just gotten so ugly over the last few weeks, and certainly over the Red Bull thing, which to me is bizarre. What F1 has always been about is pushing the limits of man, machine, and regulations, and like oil burning, right? flexi floors, J dampers, and frick and DOS. They can be a step over the line, but is that just out and out cheating when a lot of times they were the interpretation of a team or of engineers about the regulations? For example, the J dampers and the dual fusers. Both were incredibly innovative thinking, but only one was deemed as an accurate interpretation of the regulations, right? And I wouldn't say that Renault was out and out absolutely flouting it and cheating their guts out, like when Tiro was injecting a lead shot in when they filled up their water tanks, right, for weight ballast. So similarly, Grace and I have talked about this many times. It's the old Flavio Briatore gambit, right? Hiring a rival's engineer brings all of that knowledge with them to use at the new team, like hiring Adrian Newey from McLaren,
Right.
or McLaren hiring Peter Perdomo, right, from Red Bull, or Red Bull poaching a host
Everybody.
of Mercedes engine
Right.
geniuses recently. I mean, don't kid yourself. That has a lot more to do with Toto's feelings toward Red Bull these days than just Lewis not getting the championship. Trust me. He is not happy about getting poached like that. And so that brings us to the Red Bull overspin controversy. And this is some newer fans of F1 assembled in a digital mob, calling for boycotts, loss of 2021 championship or 2022 champion, and much more. They want the team ban, F1. Everybody's, guilty. They call Max a cheater. I mean, and much worse, I might add. So this brings the whole thing up about perspective about what is actually going on. Red Bull was penalized for an overspending on their cost cap program for 2021, and this caused a lot of drama, right? Ultimately, Red Bull was given a $7 million fine and had its aero development allowance cut by 10% because it overspent by around $1.8 million, all right? Originally, Toto Wolff was apoplectic about the overspend, and he was the one that was sort of out front in the press. Oh, it's a well-known paddock secret, and they overspent, and somehow he was mentioning catering when nobody else, was talking. Very few other people were saying anything about catering, and it prompted a meme, right? But then when they got handled the penalty, and I still say that the leak is a much bigger issue than the overspend, but that's a different argument. But his reaction to the penalty has been kind of muted. And I was interested, Grace, because I read his comment in the press this week, and here's what he said, quote, "Beyond the sporting penalty and the financial penalty, which obviously resonates in the real world out there, there is a big reputational consequence. And that is why I believe no team is going to put a foot wrong over the line, because you don't want to have your partners and your team dragged into this space. We're living in a transparent, compliant world. Everything needs governance, and the sport needs it. As a sport overall, this is a real achievement of the whole process." Now, the things I focused on out of that statement, I found the entire comment very strange. It would seem to endorse that the mobocracy on social media as some sort of penal system for falling afoul of the regulations. It suggests that fear of this mob will keep the teams in line, and then suggests that F1 is an era of compliancy and transparency. Now, I don't want to get on a rant, but I don't want an F1 that is compliant or beaten into submission by a mob and ran out of fear. I want F1 pushing the absolute limits of everything that it does, interpreting the regulations in an innovating with risk, right? Like the dual diffuser, the J dampers, the F ducts, right? Innovating with risk, giving the middle finger to slow, unimpressive cars, and dare I say, loud and fast as hell. If we're suggesting that the efficacy of a regulation is based on how much social media ire you can gin up through your platform by crafting a narrative against your competition, I'm really not interested in it. I'm really not. I'd prefer you just take the fight to the track and let's see who wins, right? It's It's why I wasn't a fan of Red Bull slating Renault publicly to shame them about their inferior engine or their engine's reliability. I thought that was in poor taste, no matter how frustrating Red Bull got, right? And McLaren's slap of Honda, right? For the very much the same reason. So I don't know. I found that an interesting comment. I'm interested in your take on the comment and perspective from the sport, because you always have a terrific take. So the floor is yours, Grace.
The problem is sponsors' money matters in auto sports in a way it doesn't matter in any other sport. So it's not necessarily that Formula One is run by social media, but everybody's money who's those little stickers on the side of your car cares about those optics. And that makes Formula One and any motorsport different than any stick and ball sport. If LeBron James stands out there and says, hey, I support X, Y, and Z, and Nike says, that's great, LeBron, but we're not going to sponsor you anymore because you said X, Y, and Z. It's not like the Lakers stopped playing, right? The Lakers keep on playing. That's LeBron's money. He's the one with the Nike sponsorship, not the Lakers.
Right.
Autosport is a totally different venue because that money, in that scenario, the Lakers wouldn't be able to play anymore. So they always have to play that game. And so part of the, like, for example, talking about McLaren saying, it's Honda, it's not us, is because I need those stickers to stay on my car. And if those stickers feel that it's me, McLaren, and not them, Honda, I don't have any more stickers. How am I going to keep racing? So I think that's always a dynamic that people have to keep in mind when talking about any form of motorsports in comparison to the same kind of ideas that happen in stick and ball sports. You know, they can, you know, the Nets can bench Kyrie Irving, and we can all discuss that. I know, right? It's basketball season, right? So they can bench Kyrie Irving, and we can all talk about it. But the Nets get to keep playing. If you know, we saw that in the beginning of the season with Haas, right? So you bench your driver. What does that mean for your team? What does that mean for sponsorship? I think there are probably a lot of places where drivers and athletes do things that teams wish they didn't. But especially in motorsports, you always have to be careful, because if you bench somebody, or you know, you make it look like you're a bad team, that optics, that like out front media part of it is always different in this sport. And it has to be. And so I think that always is a dynamic that comes to play. Now, I agree, you know, I agree with the idea that I think also social media does have a play in this, because when I started watching this sport, that didn't exist. And it seems like such a weird place to be in.
Right.
But I remember, right, like that one of the reasons why we started this podcast was because I was commenting on your website so much, because I just couldn't find anybody to talk to about this, because I didn't have any friends that watch Formula One, and the races run at 6:30 in the morning, and who am I convincing to watch this with me?
Right.
Because I think a lot of people, like you, when you were talking about soccer, right, a lot of people's entry point into a new sport is somebody else. So I never really watched soccer, but I have a friend, Jack, he's so into soccer and he knows so much about it. So he has tickets, to see DC United. So I've gone to a couple games, and all I do is ask like 700 questions, right?
Yeah, right.
Because I may understand the mechanics of the sport, but then somebody will chant something and I'm going, wait, what's that? And there's some history there. It happens at basketball games too. Somebody will say something. I don't know. I don't have that brain. Like some, especially guys, seem to have that brain. They're like, don't you remember in 1957 when so-and-so looked at so-and-so funny, and that beef happened 40 years ago? I'm like, I don't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, but good. I'm glad you remember this 40-year-old beef that these two players have with each other. So I think there's always place for that. I think there is some part of sports that is always, pokey, like I was saying, like I only pay attention to what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing is because I know we're going to do a podcast. And if there's some place that I can either go, oh, Todd, they did great today, or like, haha, you lost to the, Washington Commanders, right? Like, because that's some part of the fun banter, right? Yeah. But there's that line that it steps over sometimes, and not sometimes, it does step over that. And that happens in football all the time, that I'll be walking around in DC wearing a Steelers shirt and somebody will say something to me, I'm like, whoa. Like, whoa. I don't even know who you are. It's one thing to be like, hey, you don't have a quarterback anymore. Ha ha ha, you're right. Roethlisberger, whatever, but sometimes sports can get a little too far. But I think that both the compounding effect of social media, and so now everybody's voice gets the same weight. I think this is something else that happens is that every voice you hear shouldn't have the same weight. And I think that plays into that sponsorship thing, right? So,
Agreed.
like, you know, right? Like, so if I'm trying to get a new job, I'm trying to come up with an example to make this point clearer, but I might ask you, hey, Todd, what do you think about doing this job? But you're not in my field, but you know me as a person. So your input as me as a person, you go, well, Grace, you know, maybe that's not your strength, or you're better at project management than you are at this thing. I go, okay, that's good. I'll take that point. Somebody in my field might be able to say something more nuanced. I go, okay, well, this made you the bad guy. I didn't mean to do that. But like, I might put more weight on somebody that's in my field. They know more nuance, even though your big picture is still right. I don't know. I'm just trying to say that like every tweet shouldn't be the same weight as something Will Buxton says or something that comes out of F1 itself. You know, I think that I think that's one of the things that's great. We talked about this, I think, in the last podcast. The fact that now it's like I can, if I have a technical question, I can tweet Scarbs. I used to have to read, motor racing engineering magazines in order to see what Scarbs had to say about things. Now that access is so great, or that I can watch some F1 video and he explains stuff with pictures. And I'm like, oh, I never understood that thing because I'm not an engineer. I don't know these things. I think that access is a real plus that I didn't have when I started watching and you didn't have when you started watching. So the fact that I don't have to have an engineer in my life in order to watch Formula One and really understand it is a great part of social media. But there's also this other side of it that is now everybody has a voice, but they shouldn't all have equal weight. If I read something and I go, I don't know, that doesn't seem right, I'm now going to look up and see what, some professional in the field, I'll see what's on motorsports.com, or I'll go see what the race has to say and kind of pull from multiple sources. I guess what I'm saying, and I guess this does play into the political discussion that you started with, is all I want is people to be informed consumers. Don't just hear what one person says and go, oh, that must be it. It takes more work.
Yes, it does take more work, especially in Formula One.
Yeah. So I think that instead of just saying, oh, this thing is like this, I need to see, well, what is this person saying? What is this person saying? What is their angle, and what teams have they worked for, and what are they thinking about, and why would they say that? Like I was saying, why would, Toto Wolff, of course, he may feel one way or the other, but what he says publicly, his sponsors hear, and the team hears, and the fans hear, right? Same thing with Christian Horner. I was joking that Christian Horner should start a politician finishing school when he's done with Formula One, because he is masterful at it being his fault. And at the end of the press conference, we're like, it's our fault. Why did we ever accuse you of this? Right? I mean, that's a real skill to be able to be like, no, Red Bull, we didn't do anything wrong. You guys are being too hard on us, right? Like this whole, how he's just able to craft that narrative. Beautiful. He should be a politician, or
there's some validity. There's some validity to that, though.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
I think that's what he's arguing.
There always has to be some truth, right? I just think he's very masterful at how he crafts that.
Oh, he's good at it.
That's what I'm saying, and that's what a politician does.
Yeah,
it's a good. I don't mean that as a. I don't think politicians are the worst people in the world. Maybe some people do. I don't know. They do a job. And so does Christian Horner. But I think that he's able to take that and just effectively work it in a way that not everybody's able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and this leads into the next portion of this conversation. I think.
How convenient.
Yeah. Isn't that a nice segue?
Yeah.
So, and I think that the whole reason I was getting attacked, I think it was a bunch of Lewis Hamilton fans, and I was getting a bunch of DMs from them. And, it was kind of like, I guess they just didn't feel like I was being strong enough in my condemnation of Red Bull for overspending. And well, in their words, for, the cheaters, Red Bull. If you proffered your entire P&L, but you had a significant portion, or $1.8 million worth of cost structure that you felt was not applicable out of your totals, it's a little different than trying to hide $1.8 million worth of cost that never showed up on your P&L. That's a different deal. And that's, to my understanding, not what happened.
No, that's not what happened.
Interpretation of cost and where you're costing certain things and what is discounted from the calculation and what's not. But the totals were there, right?
And had they done a dry run, they might have noticed that
Yeah,
this
maybe.
was a problem.
Yeah, maybe. They may not have, because things changed even after they proffered the numbers.
But everybody else seemed to get it right.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm
I
just
agree.
saying that there is some. I guess what we're trying to say, I'll just speak for myself, is that there is. I don't think Red Bull is the enemy. I don't, that they're not. Oh, they're, they're these terrible people. But also, 9 other teams didn't have this problem, so there is some validity to. Let's take a look at what Red Bull did, what the FIA said they did, what they're saying they did, what the other teams did, and have a discussion about this, as opposed to just jumping on the Red Bull sucks bandwagon.
Yeah, but I agree. They may have incurred costs that no other teams incurred.
Right. Well, then.
But those
Maybe.
costs weren't associated with development or whatever, like catering. Yeah, that's an obvious. Okay, yeah,
right.
Casting off food.
Wait till they go to Vegas.
Yeah, right. Or hotel rooms in Vegas, let alone anything else. So, but having some sort of withholding from furloughed people, or you could see where the the detail starts to get a little cloudy. But neither here nor there. What they've gone through, from hints, innuendos, allegations, and outright accusations of flat out cheating, dog whistled by Total Wolf, Zach Brown, and other team bosses, knowing that the platforms they're on are millions and millions of people, I think is a pretty slippery slope. More slippery that it was leaked to them by someone or something within the FIA, I think is even more dastardly and more damaging to the sport.
I agree.
Spending $1 million over,
which we talked about 3 weeks
Yeah,
ago,
we
right?
did.
I agree for sure that I think
we did.
The FIA's role in this is what I would be most concerned about.
Me too.
In private, not out loud, but
No, I
in
wouldn't
private, right, with the door
In
shut and the
private,
other 9 team principals. That's
Yes.
what I would be most concerned about, because if you can't trust your oversight to keep their mouth shut,
Agreed.
well, then this all falls apart real quick.
Falls apart real quick, right? And that's why I say that, because the whole thing
Yeah.
just collapses under its own weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why Toto's comment is like, well, all the brand reputation damage you did, to the brand, on social media and everything. I think that's that's a really strange gauge for the efficacy of a program, I think. And I don't know that I want F1 to be compliant. If I don't know that that's what I want either. Yes, following rules, of course, but being compliant to the mobocracy, or being compliant to, I don't know that I agree with that.
I think that's the place we've put ourselves. Not you and I as ourselves have put ourselves in.
I agree with you. Yeah,
but I
agree
think
with
that's
you.
the place we've put ourselves in.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, to your point, F1 and their sponsors and the teams and everything need to take a look at the difference between measured reaction and knee-jerk reaction based on sentiment within the mobocracy. Also to your point, if Lewis Hamilton tweets something about F1 and I do, whose tweet should you take more seriously?
Lewis's, right?
Of course, Lewis is a 7-time world champion. Of course, you should take.
He has more experience than I will ever have.
And he's embedded. He's been in the series forever. He's spent his life trying to, of course. However, Lewis doesn't speak for all 20 drivers.
No.
He also doesn't represent all 10 teams. He only represents himself and one team, right?
Yeah.
And should you write everything Lewis says on a rock? No, of course not, because there's 19 other drivers on that team,
right?
Or on that grid, right? There's 9 other teams.
It's McLaren that has 19 other drivers, not Mercedes.
It is McLaren. It's Zach Brown who's got 19 drivers and 2 cars.
I think
that's, to your point. I think you need to be realistic about what's weighed, what's not, what's a measured response. And go ahead and finish your statement, then I'll switch the comment.
No. I think I guess I was just thinking that there's also an ebb and a flow in a history. So I think when you first start watching a sport, it is easy to, I don't know. I mean, right, that moment, because it's the only moment you have history with. You and I have both worked in our jobs long enough now that I now see things that when I first started in this field 20 years ago are coming back up again. I'm like,
yeah, right.
didn't we talk about this idea before? Right. And so it's that's what happens, right? And so it doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about that idea again, because in 20 years the world has changed and my field has changed. But you don't want to lose that history of what did we talk about before, right? That's the whole point of documentation, is so that I can go back to that document, read that, and go, you know what? It's still really the same. Let's not put our money and effort into that. Or, oh, well, here, the stumbling block before was the technology. Well, we have that technology now, so let's go back to that idea. So I think the same thing happens when you watch a sport. When you first start, all you have is that moment. You don't necessarily, you haven't experienced that history. After you watch a sport for a while, you have that history. It's some version of what they tell you with parenting, that like the days are long, but the years are short, right? Sports suffer from that too, right? Like that it takes a while to get the ebb and the flow of how teams go. And that, I don't know, a lot of the talk about was that, Ferrari sucked for the last 3 years because this year was where they put all their money. What is that really what happened? I don't know. I'm not on the Ferrari boardroom. I having seen how the season went, I'm not sure that should be their narrative, but you know what I mean? I think that they're always going to have that inside information. They're going to be able to say to the drivers, this is a rebuilding year, right? Again, that's a basketball thing, right? Like we're going to just have all these young players. We're just going to all spend our time. We're going to learn together, because in 5 years we'll get a championship. But no, right now you got to stay with me. You got to trust me, because we're going to get there. That's the conversation they have. But when you're a sponsor with a sticker on the side of the car, you don't care about the ebb and the flow. You don't care about the history. You only have that the days are short. You don't have the years are long. And so they're not willing to stick it out, because they need that turnover now. They're not willing to go, I hear you, Coach Todd, that you have a 5-year plan. That's great that you have a 5-year plan for your team. But see, I got to pay my bills now.
Right. Yeah, it is true. And in that sense, from the team's perspective, you got to weigh all those components,
right?
And they're all part of the ingredients of whether you're cooking a successful F1 stew or not. And I think that your point about coming into, like, if I was like, let's say this year I decided I was going to go all in on Premier League, and I was going to pick a team and I was going to watch as much Premier League as possible. My life experience with Premier League would kind of start this year.
Right. You would be 0 days old.
Yeah. So I'd start to couch things that happened earlier this fall versus games in the spring or whatever it might be. And you start to grow that base. It is difficult, but I've had some of the, I quote, new F1 fans getting arguments over, and I would bring up past precedent or something that would happen, and they're like, well, who gives a damn, about Lauda or what he did, blah, blah, blah. Max is doing this or Lewis is doing that. And I guess I want to say, if you don't give a damn about what Lauda did, you're kind of missing the DNA of F1. You're kind of missing it.
I think that happens at work though too, right? In my example, I've definitely had people that say, well, that was 20 years ago. Why do we care that you already thought that thought?
Right.
Because we're just going to keep repeating thinking the same thought. That's why history is important. And I think that plays into your point exactly. Like if you don't understand how we got here to this moment, you're missing something, right? Like, and absolutely that plays into the political that all teams have. And I think it's so much more out front in some ways than something like football. The NFL, right? It's all the owners and they're, closed door. Yeah. Right. I think we've had, I just totally I just cut in there. I'm sorry. But anyway,
no, okay.
So again, living in DC, Dan Snyder's has been in a bit of controversy for a long time, and he's finally going to hopefully sell the team. But it's taken this so long because the owners are the only other people, the 30-yearly owners are the only other people that can push him out. We don't know what they talk about. And it's only now that the money is really starting to hit him and that he's losing revenue for the sport that they're going to push him out. Formula One doesn't operate that way. And so I think that you have to, there's so many more components to it than the NFL that has 30 people and Goodell as their mouthpiece. I think that comes up a lot in the NFL too, is that people are like, well, why doesn't Goodell do something? they pay for him.
Right.
His salary is
right.
paid by the owners. He's not going to come out and say, Dan Snyder sucks and we want him out of the sport.
Yeah, right,
That's not
right.
what he's paid to do. And so I think
Right.
that happens a lot too. People have jobs. And so you have to think, of course, Jonathan Wheatley's going to, get on the horn and he's going to call, again, pastime, Michael Massey and be like, what? We want this for our team. Of course, that's Jonathan Wheatley's job.
Yeah, that's his job.
So that's what he's supposed to do. And if he's not on the horn, and there's a Jonathan Wheatley at every team, even if we don't know all their names, who's always on the horn talking to whoever race director is, getting their point put through. Now, we can discuss whether or not that's the right thing to do. The change that they've made for this season that said we want less of that, that's always existed. So we can talk about those nuances, but getting mad at Jonathan Wheatley because he's getting on the phone with Michael Massey, that's his job.
It is his job. And understanding kind of have these situations happen before with who, what drivers, what was involved.
How did we get here? I mean, I think that's always.
Yeah, it is. And it's like
Right.
one of the things that where I work in the day job. And there was, this has been several years ago, but there was, new leaders for this, region that came in. And I always found it interesting because, I would always think that the important thing to ask is, how did we get here? How did we go from
Always.
$0 in sales for this product
Yep.
to $100 million a year in this? How did we get there?
I agree.
What did we do right? What could we have done better? And where could we experience the kind of growth that we want going forward, right?
Right.
But understanding how you got there. So that's why in F1, it's critical to understand how we got to the kind of tires we have now. From groove tires to slick to, treaded tires, and
Bridgestone, Michelin, right? You got to
the
understand
Michelin, the
that.
tire wars and all that stuff. And to understand why we're so augured in, I see people say, this is stupid, have these tires in Pirelli. Well, there's a reason we're here.
Yeah. I think
And it's important to understand because then it'll couch some of your mobocracy and your outrage over the frickin' tires.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, this is when Red Bull gets dragged to the mud by a leaked letter from Zach implying cheating by Toto Wolff, who seemed to know Red Bull's P&L and where they spent the money. I find that understandable about Red Bull's reaction. They got fined. They're losing time. That's what the FIA, that's what they decided. We could argue all day, oh, that should have been banned. Oh, get some perspective, on what Red Bull means to F1 and the amount of money that they pour into the F1 machine. Get real, kick them out of this. Oh, grow up, come on.
Here's how I have this, again, this parallels nicely with the earlier political discussion we were having. What I tell people is it's human nature that your first reaction is anger. The hope is in the second reaction, which is thought.
Yeah,
so
think about it.
We've all had that situation where you write a manuscript of some sort. You're going to present it or you're going to publish it or it's going to be a white paper. And I spend all this time, my blood, sweat, and tears. And I give it to Todd and I say, Todd, could you read this for me? Todd reads it. He really cares about it. So he makes a lot of comments. My first reaction is always going to be, what the hell do you know, Todd? You don't know anything about this. I put it aside. I walk away. I come back the next day and I go, oh, he's kind of right. That sentence is not very clear.
Yeah.
And you're right.
Yeah.
I did assume some things here that people who aren't so close to this project may not know. Don't send the email between that first read and the second
that's
read.
right. Yeah,
Wait till your second read.
Right.
If something makes you mad, walk away from it because
know.
I asked you to do it and you care about me. So why would you do something that's going to hurt me? And so you kind of look at it the second time and you go, oh, or I go, I'm not sure I understand why you said this. And you go, why? I read it this way. And I go, oh, I never thought to read it that way. That's why you have a second, third, fourth set of eyes on it. So I think that's true in politics. I just think it's human nature. Your first reaction is always, what the hell do you know? And to push back. My paper was perfect. How dare you have comments on it? My second reaction is, oh, well, So write the email, don't send it. Write the tweet, don't send it. Wait until you calm down 5 seconds and get past that vitriol.
Yeah, I just try to
about
engage
it.
them. I just try to engage, I don't get mad. I don't get vile.
I think
I just try to explain, hey, there's some precedent for that, or that's unprecedented.
I also think
written.
I think this also happens too, is because I've seen it happen where you'll say something And I go, oh, that's fine. And then somebody else has a different reaction to it. Right? Text has no emotion to it.
Yeah, right. Neither do
so,
emails, right?
Right. And so I think that's the other thing too, is that knowing you and having had how many gazillion conversations over Enzo Truli's life about these things, when
Yeah.
I read things, I go, oh yeah, that's how I read it, because that's how Todd would have told that to me in conversation. But people that don't have conversation with you all the time
Right.
don't know how to read it or don't know what your tone is. And so I think sometimes that's that. I didn't mean that personally. You don't have to read in Toto Wolff's tone. I don't care, right? Like Toto Wolff shouldn't care about what you have to say either.
No, he
but
didn't.
You're just some dude. I'm just some dude. But I think that when it's interacting between real humans and real humans, just,
it's a different
I
deal,
always want a place to be. Yeah. Am I going to call Red Bull a cheater? And then, yes. And then somebody's going to say, are they really a cheater? I go, yeah, okay. So you have a point, Todd, but where's the fun in that? Right.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to pick on Ferrari and you're always going to pick on McLaren, and that's fine.
Right.
That's part of sportsdom, but it crosses some line. And when it becomes, I hate you, Todd, that's not okay. And
they just
take a moment, people.
They just got really personal. And, it got Red Bull to the point where they said, well, the hell with Ted Kravitz and Sky Sports. Right. And this was a knock-on effect of Toto and Zach and other teams ginning up a narrative about Red Bull, the Sky Sports crew, as well as print media. I mean, they had a hand in just milking this situation for every click they could get by adding more and more narrative, more innuendo, more assumptions to the story each time they told it. And it all kind of culminated in Ted Kravitz's notebook session in his comment implying that Lewis was robbed of the 2021 title. Now, it's not, according to Red Bull, that's more the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's really been what Sky Sports has been doing all year long. At that point, Red Bull had had enough. They boycotted speaking to any of the Sky Sports team. And I wrote an editorial on this. To be fair, honestly, as a Yankee, I don't have a dog in the hunt, but to be a Yankee and listen to Sky Sports, Simon, Crofty, and Ted have been having a go at Red Bull and Max for quite a while. I mean, they're big Lewis fans. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's been at the expense of Max and Red Bull, and it's been pretty obvious of that bias. Maybe if you're British and you're a big Mercedes fan, Lewis fan, maybe you don't notice it, but as a Ferrari fan and a Yankee, it's pretty obvious. And I wrote that in the editorial. And I also wrote that it just feels like to me that Sky and everybody is still milking that Lewis train, but things change over time. Eventually, Mika Hakkinen and Michael Schumacher aren't relevant to Formula One anymore. Kimi Räikkönen isn't relevant to Formula One as far as a current driver, fan appeal, and all that. And I was saying in my editorial, you've got Lando and George and Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly and Max Verstappen and Carlos and Charles. You've got 7 that I've named just right there. Dynamic, fantastic young drivers with large multimedia followings, huge fan bases that have come into the sport as new fans. They're all following that. Lewis, yeah, we get it. He's great, but I love Lando, right? And Lewis just isn't as relevant as these younger drivers are to younger fans. That's perfectly okay, and it's perfectly normal. It doesn't mean you're a Lewis hater, but Sky just hasn't let go. This whole time they're focused on Lewis and what can Lewis do this weekend. And Lewis, meanwhile, George has beat him in qualifying and finished 4th in half the frickin' races, and you're not talking about George at all. And to me, I think that's just bizarre why you wouldn't do that. In the end, as I said, I think Red Bull should have just ignored the whole damn thing, knowing they're the underdog in a British heavy press, been adults about it and just moved along. But I guess everybody has their breaking point, and maybe stopping press access stops the comments from the team, Red Bull, that the press twist and turn and fashion into their own narrative about, the overspend or whatever. I don't know. Perhaps just getting the job done on track and leaving the comments out of the process will calm things down a bit. I don't know, but that was the reaction to all of this.
I don't think it helps when you say, that's it. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
And that didn't even last 24 hours.
Yeah.
I think that was a big I mean, I saw this whole thing as, like I found this all entertaining because, first of all, there's a point that Sky is carried by like 8 gazillion countries or whatever, right?
I know. Yeah.
But they aren't unbiased. I said, I think that's the thing that I always like, when you watch other countries cover the sport, like I joked about the one time we watched the Spanish broadcast and they were all about Alonso. And that's all they talked about. Now, some of that's because I don't speak Spanish. So that's the only thing I could hear them talking about perhaps. But they don't, you know what I mean? They're like, we're here for Alonso. We support Alonso. We're talking about Alonso.
Sure.
And I think that that's what happens in Sky to a point with Lewis and with other British drivers. But I think that because they're carried so internationally, right? That bias, right, might come through. But I don't think Christian Horner should have ever said, to use the old Formula One metaphor, we're throwing our toys out of the pram and we're taking them all home. And it lasted a day. I was like, you can't, because of course your sponsors can't live with you not talking to Sky. Once again, if your stickers don't show up on TV and your face isn't out there and all your little logos on your shirt aren't out there, your sponsor is not going to be very happy because they're looking at how many times did my name show up on the TV broadcast. And if you suddenly decided I'm not talking to the media anymore, my name's not showing up in any broadcast. So that didn't last very long. And so that was sort of they brought that on themselves though. I just thought you just let it go.
And to be honest with you, I mean, Ted's notorious for,
It's
whipping up
what
a
he
word
does.
salad. That's just what he does. He
That's
just
why
gets
I
into
love-
a twisted word salad and he just, got into this thing. He's been calling Formula One. He's been in the paddock for 20 years. I mean, he's a pro. And I love Ted. He's great.
Yeah.
But
I yell at him all the time. Oh, come on. I think that's
he's great.
his charm.
I love Ted. But if anything else, I think it's just a shot across their bow saying, hey, enough. All right, enough. We've had
I don't know. It was
so
not
we'll see what.
I don't know.
I think
it made Red Bull look more they looked more negative coming out of this than I think Sky did.
They may have. Well, that's why I said they should have just ignored it and moved on. I mean,
I don't know.
I get it. You're pissed off. You're sick of Sky constantly, taking a shot at you while bigging up Lewis constantly, and it's kind of and Mercedes. And it's kind of like, enough is enough. We're in this championship too.
Yeah.
And so is Ferrari, and so is Williams, and so is McLaren, and these other teams. Enough, and I get it.
He brings that on himself, though, too. If Christian Horner wasn't out front so much, I mean, do we ever talk about Franz Tost? When was the last time we talked about him on this podcast?
Yeah.
He's not out there like Christian Horner is. So, yeah, when you're going to be out all the time, people are going to poke at you all the time, and they're not going to say,
but so is Toto.
And
Toto's out
they say things about
all
him, too.
the time.
That's right. But I think that's fair that if somebody also said, yo, Toto Wolff, you're out there all the time. You're not Jos Capito.
Right. Yeah, it's not the Williams.
If you're going to be public, this is what's going to happen. People are going to say things about you because you're very public.
Right. We used to joke all the time, Toto had, you need an opinion on F1, just ask Toto. He's got an opinion on how Ferrari should be running his team, Yeah, he's got an opinion on everything.
I just think that I also wonder too, now that I'm thinking about it, is because we've often talked about this, and this happens in sports all the time. If a driver stands at the microphone and says, I'm done with this team, they make me like, I think of MotoGP, right? Fabio Quartararo at the beginning of the season was very down on Yamaha. That by the time we hear it as fans publicly from a driver or rider's mouth or any athlete's mouth, this has been in the back room for a long time.
Yeah.
So you have to worry. So I wonder if that's some part of it too, that Red Bull has tried to like gently slide this guy like, all right, this has gone too far. This game isn't going to go. And then they felt like, now I have to say something out loud.
Well, and I think that was kind of, while I wasn't excited about the way Red Bull handled the Renault thing publicly, I think they did get to the point. I'll guarantee you They had numerous meetings about how to improve the reliability of that engine
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
get a better engine. And it came to a head and nothing was getting done. And Red Bull just had it. And they said, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not going to take the lumps and look like idiots because our engine
Right.
keeps failing. And we've gone and we've had meetings until we're blue in the face. And I'm taking the gloves off in the press. And I'm just
Right.
going to call it out what it is. And I'm sure that's to the point they got to. And
Yep.
to your point, maybe they had similar conversations with Sky, about it,
Right.
and they've just had it. We've talked about it. You guys continue to do it. We're done. And they should have had Helmut Marko do it.
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
Done.
Yeah.
Who knows? Hey, let's do some Albin's Cat, shall we?
All right.
Yes, it's Grace's favorite time. Grace, talk to me about the resurgence of Ducati.
Nice segue. Okay,
Yeah.
so of course, MotoGP
Has not been done since Casey, am I right?
No, that's right. That's right. So, MotoGP, the final race was this morning in Valencia, and Pecco Bagnaia is the new world champion. It was a good race. Valencia, I know, right?
Yes, well done.
So yeah, it was a good race. Not always Valencia. Valencia's. I'll put it this way. Much like Australia, when it's first, is a good race because it's first, right? We're
Yeah,
like, yeah,
right,
Australia,
right.
but like Australia, like third or fourth, we're like, Australia. So
yeah.
I think that's Valencia, right? It's because it's last. MotoGP often comes to the end, and so a lot of iconic races have happened at Valencia because the championship often comes down to the last race. So, and that said, I thought it was a very good race at Valencia. I was very entertained. I enjoyed watching it. And yeah, we now have a new world champion. I think that Quartararo did all he can, but I think it makes for an interesting next year. And I also wanted to put out a shout out for Rins for winning the race, last race for Suzuki, and saw them off with a warm goodbye. I don't know, but that was it was great to see a team that's going to leave, get a podium, get a win.
That's sad.
It is sad. I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll. I don't know. Again, it's the ebb and flow of history. They'll
Yeah, it
come
is.
back, or they'll do
Yeah.
really well in, sports bike somewhere. I never
Yeah.
believe that they're really going to be gone. But I wish Jack wouldn't have crashed. I think that was the only other thing since he's leaving Ducati. He's leaving the main team. But it was a good
Kinda
race.
sensed that was coming.
Yeah, I don't know. It just hasn't. I mean, and the Ducatis are notoriously. I mean, that's why we talk about they haven't won since Casey Stoner. It's not because nobody's
Yeah.
tried, right?
Yeah.
The
Rossi
Ducatis
tried.
Ducatis are notoriously
Yeah, they're
not
tough.
an easy bike to get. And Casey Stoner was like the alien of all aliens that somehow was able to
He was.
get in there and just dominate. So, and hopefully, I mean, Marquez crashed out. I think we're all still kind of on pins and needles over what 2023 is going to look for Marquez. But
Yeah, I know.
I will also put out there that one of the things that I thought was humorous to me. So we often talk about the costs in Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so MotoGP, you're all in Valencia. Let's have a test on Tuesday, right? We're all here. Just stay in Valencia a couple extra days. The testing on Tuesday is with your 2023 team. So you've been in 2022 for 2 more days, and now we've moved to 2023 on Tuesday. I just thought that was such a funny
Right.
thing that it was just Pecco, we're done. You won your championship, but now we're on to 2023. The
Right,
testing for
right.
next year has already started, and it's Tuesday.
That's funny.
So, but Formula One, you could just stay longer at places and
Right.
do your testing like MotoGP doesn't. That'll save you some costs, but whatever. Why would we learn from another series?
No. Well, they do that at a few races, but yes. I
Yeah,
agree.
no, you're right. They do more of that now, and they
Yeah,
tend to
than they
stay in
did.
places longer, right?
Yeah.
Right. But back in the day, Ferrari had their own track, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Yes.
but yeah,
Cool.
Tuesday, 2023 testing. But yeah, Pecco
Yay.
Bagnaia, Ducati, congratulations,
Yay.
World Riders Championship.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's good. Hey, you know who also won a championship today? Joey Logano, his second 2018 to 2022 taking that Pennzoil shell car Ford all the way to the top in NASCAR, baby.
I don't even know who's in NASCAR anymore.
Joey Logano.
Okay.
So I've done the double twice, where you go to the Indianapolis 500,
Right,
and after
and
the
then
race you get
Coca-Cola.
on a jet and you fly down to the Coca-Cola
Right.
600, right? So when I was at Indy, I was there with Shell and the Penske crew, which was awesome. And then when you fly down to Coca-Cola, you're there with the Joey Logano and that team.
Oh.
Super good guys and a great team. Enjoyed the heck out of it and got to sit in there where the pit wall is and watch their operation and super cool. So great group of guys. So
I
they
don't think I
deserve it.
could. I don't think I could name another current NASCAR driver.
Ross Chastain.
Yeah, see, I don't know who that is. Kevin Harvick still in the sport? I don't even know.
Yes.
Oh, good. Look, I knew at least one other
Yeah.
driver in the sport.
Kevin Harvick. Yeah. And
I
you
have-
got Kaibu and Kubu. Those were your favorites.
Yeah. Well, I haven't watched since 2000, so I've certainly
know.
22 years later.
I know.
I remember when Jeff Gordon was the young guy, right?
I know.
I have
I'm
no
still
idea.
asking, what the hell happened to Ernie Irvin? Where's
Yeah.
he?
Oh, Swerve and Irvin.
Yeah, the 28 Texaco car.
That's right. See, I can talk all the old, Bobby Labonte. I can talk,
Yes,
all
Bobby
the old
Labonte,
drivers.
Yeah. Bobby's
Um,
a good guy.
Yeah. Now an old guy. Again, I remember
Yeah.
he was not an old
Right.
guy.
Dale Earnhardt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the old
Yeah.
the classic Dick Trickle. See,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
like
it.
Ernie Irvin. Yeah.
Yeah. You ready for some no shit headlines?
No, wait, I have one more story.
Oh, okay. Shoot.
Well, I'm gonna try to be selective about my stories.
Okay.
All right. So the first story, I have two stories. You're gonna just have to bear with me. Three stories. I take that back. First story. I know we just talked about Christian Horner and Red Bull to death,
We did.
but I can't let this go. His statement about how old their wind tunnel was, hilarious.
It was
That
great.
became our joke all weekend long. See, this is what you need in your life. This is why you need other Formula One fans. Because then it was like, Stonehenge. Have you been to Stonehenge? That's actually our wind tunnel. Do you remember, the Crusades? Our wind tunnel is so old that it is run by a hoop and a stick. Like, it's been around since the Cold War, and it's sometimes hot and sometimes like his whole narrative about their wind tunnel, hilarious.
I know.
I love that. So we just went on. I think the best was at one point I was like, our wind tunnel is so old, it's been around since the Civil War. And Flip goes, in England? I was like, damn it. I guess not. I guess that one didn't work, right?
Didn't work.
The Revolutionary War, I guess that one would work. But
Yeah.
so I thought I enjoyed that humor of the Cold War wind tunnel that is Red
Oh, I
Bull's
like
wind
it.
tunnel and his narrative.
Yeah, we as soon as we finished Hadrian's Wall, we built the wind tunnel.
Exactly. Like I just thought, right? First we
Yes.
we carried all the sticks in by ourselves and we made the bricks. It was just so
Yes.
dramatic.
In the old days, it was a large Catherine's wheel, but now it's a wind tunnel.
See,
Yeah.
now you're getting this. This is what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying. It was hilarious to me. This it's just some guys with a fan really fast, right?
right.
My second story is, so I was reading The Economist, as I want to do because I'm a nerd. And so they do book reviews. And so I was reading this book review on Goethe, who wrote Faust. That's the book that most people know that he wrote. Anyway, somebody wrote a compendium, like what he was like as a person. And so the comment that they were making was that this guy was kind of like a sycophant disciple, and that you should read it. It's a good insight into the author, but it's more like a painting than a picture. I thought that was the best description of Drive to Survive, even though that's not what they were talking about at all,
Yeah.
I've ever heard, right? Like, because
Yeah.
people see it, and I, as a fan, want it to be a picture. It's not a
Right.
photograph. It's not a snapshot like that. It's more like a painting. It's kind of a rough idea with some poetic license
Yeah.
about what kind of
That's a great
happened.
point. Mhm.
So I think if you think of it more like a painting than a photograph,
Right.
then maybe it'll have a proper context for Drive to Survive. But I just really want to give a shout out to The Economist because I didn't come up with that phraseology. But
No, it's good for yeah,
good.
it's true.
It's
It's a
good.
lot like my life. It should have been a picture, but it's more like a Monet.
yeah,
From far away it looks okay, but up close it's a mess.
you have no eyebrows, right?
Yeah, right.
So I don't either. It's okay. So
All
my
right.
my last story was, so Halloween was on Monday, and so it poured down rain here, so that really affected the Halloween turnout. but not mostly the little kids, which are the best part because they're always so cute. But some of the older kids were able to brave the rain and came out. So I have these 3 teenage boys. They're probably like 12, 14. They come out, and I'm handing out candy, and it's raining. So I'm wearing a ball cap. Well, I'm wearing my JPM hat. And like one kid goes, "Oh, Formula One. Do you watch Formula One?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I watch Formula One." The kid goes, "Oh, well, who's your favorite driver?" And I said, "Well, McLaren's my team." And he goes, "Oh, Lando Norris." I'm like, yeah, Lando Norris. I love Lando Norris. That's great. So we're having this. The next kid goes, "Oh, I'm a Max Verstappen fan." And I was like, that's unfortunate. And he goes, "Well, I like Checo too." I'm like, "All right, you can have some candy. Like, I'll let that slide. You can be a Checo fan and have some of my candy. I'm not sure if Verstappen fans, And then the third kid, of course, not to be outdone, was like, "How about I give you all of my candy for your car?" And points at the Tesla. I'm like, "Nice try, kid. Like, I like that you're working your angles here, guys, but all I got for you is candy. You can't have my car." But I just like the kid was sort of like, "Yay, Max Verstappen. Oh, all right. How about Checo?" Yeah, that's good. You can get some candy for that. No more Max Verstappen, though. Don't be coming to my door with that stuff. But anyway, Halloween, it's always fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Made some Formula One fans.
We moved out in the Ozark Mountains, so there's very, very few trick-or-treaters. But I got to hand it to you. So we may have had 8 all night.
Oh, I love Halloween.
And there was a couple singles and then groups of like 3, right?
Yeah.
But there was a group that came up, and so we get this whole thing full of candy, and kids. And I said, "Oh, take more than one. Take a few.
Take a big handful. Yeah.
They take 2 or 3,
Yeah.
And they were really sweet. And so the last group that came up, there was 3 of them. There was a young boy, a young girl, then probably 10, ish, 12, 10. And then a young girl who may have been in a prince's outfit, I think maybe. And she was probably about 7, 8, And it was hilarious because I was like, "Oh, okay, great," and they took some candy, and then I said, "Well, take a little, a bit more," and I said, "Oh, okay," and then the second person takes some. Then I get to this little girl. And I said, "Well, no, you can have more than one. Take a few." She takes both hands, stuffs them in, pulls out this huge, almost all my candy. I mean, she just pulls out all this candy and just dumps it
Oh my
into her
gosh.
bag. And I'm sitting there looking at her. She looks up at me, and I was like, "Okay." I said, "Oh, look, you left one." And I held it up, and I said, "Here, it's a Butterfinger. Do you like Butterfingers?" And she goes, "Well, it may upset my stomach, but I'll take it for my dad. He likes it." I said, "Okay." It was awesome.
So funny.
Good for her.
Yeah, we usually trick-or-treating is until 9:00, but like 8:00, it totally petered out. And but that's always what happens, especially now, because we work from home much more now. We have a lot more remote work, because it used to be the next day you just took it in the office. I'm like, now it's even more. I'm like, no, I take like 5, because I can't even take this all into the office the next day. I still have a big bag of leftover candy. It's going to take us until a millennial to get through it.
Right. Yeah. Many years ago, we switched because it's like, no, we're only buying candy we like.
Yeah.
Period.
I just don't eat that much. I'm not really a chocolate person. It's fine. I'm not a sweets person is what it is. I often tell, because people will be like, "Oh, I brought in cake." I'm like, "Well, I'm good." I'm like, "But if you brought in a dozen bagels, I'll fight you for them." It's not that I don't have the same sort of like soft spot for food that other people do. It's just not really sweets. But savory shit, I'll shiv you for it.
Yeah, right.
So candy, I'm like, it'll be there forever. But I did that I did that the one year, and I bought Almond Joy. Almond Joy are the ones with the coconut.
Yes.
I know. I really like Almond Joys. Kids do not.
Hate them.
No, the kids were like, "Do you have anything else?" I'm like, "Fine, I'll go take these inside." Like, I get it. Nobody wants my coconut candy.
I know. I remember when I was young, you go trick or treat and you'd show up at some dude's house and he's like hands out 0 bars.
Oh,
are you kidding me?
Mary Janes were the worst. Do they still have those? They're like little.
I don't know. I don't know.
Some kid. Now you got me going. One kid, we gave out sugar babies, which are chocolate covered caramel. Yeah. And one kid was looking in the bowl and he's like, "What are these?" I was like, "Oh, those are sugar babies." He's like, "Why?" Like, I don't know what those are. It's like, "It's chocolate covered caramel." And he went, "Oh, I like these." Like, like he was like, "Where's this candy been my whole life? Chocolate covered caramel." I was like, "Yeah, man, you want those."
Exactly.
He wasn't sure about this weird candy this lady was giving out, but
That's right.
chocolate covered caramel, he was in.
What was the big chunk of chocolate? Just a big square. What did they call that?
Oh, it was like in a silver
It
wrapper.
was like chunky, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're
I'd
right.
say
I
it
think it
was
was just like
chunky.
chunky.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like it was literally just a square of chocolate.
Yeah, it was a square of chocolate. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and I always try to have a mix of chocolate and then like Jolly Ranchers or lollipops or stuff like that because some of the kids don't want chocolate.
And I was on
Yeah.
a rant. My wife and I discussed it. The peanut M&Ms,
Yeah.
not the same. Much smaller. Not the same.
Oh, size what? It's shrinkflation.
Yes, it is. It's shrinkflation. Yep. Not
I-
the same. They used to be big. Used to be big peanuts in them. Not the same. I'm on to you, M&Ms. I know what you're doing.
I have the same complaint about my bird seed, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Shrinkflation. It's just filler now.
Shrinkflation. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. How about some no shit headlines? Shall we?
All
do
right,
it?
I'm ready.
All right. Here we go. First no shit headline. Botas keen to stick around for Audi arrival at Sauber F1. I bet
Me
he
too.
is. I bet he is. I bet he's thinking, I could just kind of hang around here and
Yeah.
be with an Audi Works team. Of course he is. And it's going to be the two hottest seats in F1.
Me and my
apart
bucket
from-
hat.
Yeah, apart from Red Bull, Mercedes, and
Right.
Ferrari. Give me a break.
Yeah, the hottest, not the front teams. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, a Helmut Marko.
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
That's right, that Helmut Marko helmet. Helmut Marko told Red Bull drivers it's just not possible to beat Max Verstappen.
Oh, okay.
That's
Right on.
It's just kind of, is that a motivation? I don't know.
Yes, the young
Thanks.
Dutchman was a bit annoying out there today.
Yes, the young Dutchman. Okay.
I
fair
just
enough.
think, but I think even if I was Max Verstappen, I'd be like, thanks.
yeah.
Like, I don't really know. That's like such a weird statement. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure there's context there. This one I find interesting because here's the headline: Lewis Hamilton snubbed again as Sebastian Vettel changes his mind on F1 GOAT debate. So the British press is all up in arms that Sebastian Vettel first, when asked who the GOAT was, said it was Schumacher. Didn't
Fair.
matter what Lewis did. In his
Yeah.
mind, Schumacher was the GOAT.
that's fair.
Doesn't matter how many titles Lewis won. That's what
It's
Sebastian.
Michael Jordan. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they asked him again, and he changed his mind. Now he thinks it's Fangio. And the British press are just outraged that he didn't say Lewis. And it's kind of like, you can have a GOAT in Formula One, and it doesn't have to be Lewis.
I
you
don't
know?
think.
Not
Yeah.
everyone has to have Lewis as their GOAT. I certainly don't. To me, I think Schumacher was freaking awesome.
I
He's on a
think-
picture behind me. But Jim Clark, in my mind, is the
Yeah, I have
GOAT.
that guy.
Yeah. Yes, Jim Clark, which is this other guy right here.
Yeah,
Below the-
I only have Senna. I only have one picture.
And you got Senna. And my Senna is what, over here?
Yeah.
Yes, right there. Senna. Yes. Some people think Senna's the GOAT, right?
Yeah.
Pro. So, I get it. But I just think it's funny. Instead of saying Sebastian Vettel changes his mind on who the F1 GOAT is, Lewis Hamilton snubbed again. Way to get Lewis Hamilton in your clickbait.
I just think it's funny. Right. That is the greatest clickbait headline. But especially since if we've learned anything from all these like unboxed videos they make the drivers do,
Yeah.
that Sebastian Vettel actually knows his history. So I'd be most interested in what Vettel says is
Yes.
who's the GOAT in any given time, because he clearly knows shit. Unlike the rest of us, they're just like, I wasn't alive yet. I don't know who that was.
Well,
yeah.
Fangio was freaking awesome. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. He's right
But I think
there.
I mean, these GOAT conversations are always clickbait, right? Like,
They
I mean,
are.
we
They
talk
are.
about it in basketball, right? Is LeBron
Yeah, they
James
are.
better than Michael Schumacher? Is he Michael? Oh my God, Michael Jordan. Woo.
No, he's not.
I know, right? But everything is a different era.
It is.
LeBron's still playing. I mean, there weren't as
Different
many
tennis shoe
games.
technology.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's before you even get into Wilt
Yeah.
Chamberlain or something like that. So I think that these GOAT discussions are just what we as fans like to do over beer on a like Friday night. I don't think these are ever anything more than just like fun
Right.
thought exercises. Nobody's
Dr. J.
Yeah. I don't think you can argue with that. There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan,
Uh-huh.
Larry Bird.
Oh. I will
Those
say
are hard to beat.
Larry Bird, we were watching also, I think this is hilarious too, watching old sports footage.
Yeah.
Man, you really had to memorize numbers because that's the only thing you could see. We were watching some old game for some reason. I'm like, well, that guy, I'm pretty sure is Larry Bird because it's a really tall Celtics white guy. So that has to be Larry Bird, but I'm not really sure because you can't read their names. I'm like, how spoiled are we now that I don't have to like memorize who any of these people are because I can see their faces, so I know what they look like, and I can read their names on the back of the jerseys. But back in the day, you're just like, oh, that guy, I think.
That guy, I know.
His glasses, that's Dr. J, right? Okay, that tall guy there, yeah.
Crazy.
So, high def, it's really ruined the whole like memorizing players and their numbers. You don't need to do that anymore.
That's true. All right. Well, let's wrap things up. I'm going to hold our mailbag till next week.
Wait, no, you can't do that. You finally have a question I have an answer to.
Which one?
The first one.
The first one?
Yeah.
All right. I'll ask the first one, but I don't want to get, we're really long on time. So,
people, give me 2 more minutes.
I know. People always complain a bit.
Listen, we only have 2 races left, and now I'm taking as much time as I want in the off season, people.
I know.
All right.
Mr. Jury asked this question for banter. Maybe it was just the excitement or lack of from the Mexico Grand Prix, but it seems that coming late into the season in recent years, I feel that the season could have been concluded already, and I'd be fine with that. Basically, how many races do you feel are enough, and how many are too many? I believe there's 24 races next year, which I'm sure many are looking forward to, but to me, I'd be fine with 21 or 22 races. What are your thoughts?
20 races. I think there are too many. I think in a sport, you either have to have a few, like football, or a metric ton, like basketball and baseball. 24 is too many. I think, but that's just purely from my watching excitement standpoint. It's not from money. It's not from having 3 races in the United States. It's not from any of those other perspectives. Just me as a fan, about 20 races is where I start waning into other sports and stop paying attention. So I'm pro fewer races. From my viewing perspective only. I think there's too many races.
I am going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say this. I totally agree with you.
And
I think there's too many races. I think
and pick better races.
Is a good number.
I think it's very much like Sting used to always say about Andy Sumner. I only gave you 4 bars because then I knew your solo would be the best 4 bars. If I gave you 20 bars to noodle, you'd be all over the place, right?
Yeah,
so have some editing and just pick the 20 best races and not be all over the place.
The problem is we'd lose all the Spa and all the legacy tracks.
Exactly, because we'd go to Miami. And
we'd go to Miami and Las Vegas and all this crap, when in reality, the sport should carry its own weight. And to have 20 races at iconic tracks around the world should, in my mind, would be better racing, more manageable for teams, for staff, would make each race more critical.
Yes.
And yeah, I agree with you. I agree, Mr. Jury. I think 24 is too many.
And I will also put this other plug. George, they were at the Vegas launch thing, which we watched because, what else we're going to do on a Sunday. But he made this statement that I thought was also plays into this question, which is he said, they asked him, do you think Vegas is going to be a fun track? And he said, again, much better than I'm about to say, but like from a driver's perspective, it's not very challenging. And so I'm not really looking forward to, he didn't say that. I'm not really looking forward to it, but for you as the fans, it's going to be great. There's going to be lots of overtaking and there's going to be lots of things. So what I thought was interesting is that what makes it a good race for a driver is very different from what makes it a good race for a spectator. And I think that plays into this as well, because I think a lot of the tracks that get left on are tracks that are good to watch, but aren't necessarily the tracks that us anoraks want or the tracks that the drivers want.
Right.
And so I thought that was an easy way to say that George kind of like was just like, well, I might not be into this track, but you guys will be.
You guys will be. Yeah, good point. All right. Well, that does it for the podcast. If you like this podcast, give us a good ratings over at Apple, iTunes, or Apple Music, whatever they call it these days. Give us a good rating. And a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because we could not and would not do this podcast if it weren't for you. And so we're very grateful for all of our Patreon supporters. If you want to weigh in on some of these subjects, or if you're a new fan, you want to go tell me to shut up and I need to learn what the hell I'm talking about Formula One, you can do that over at theparcfermé.com. Just do it with decorum and civility as always, because that's what the website was created for. No personal attacks. Also, we're going to be back next week, and we're going to be talking about Formula One news. We'll try to keep the Halloween talk down to a minum. But
whatever. Don't put limits on me like that.
I know. I'm constantly. Nobody listens. They listen to half an hour of your show, and they stop listening after that.
My mom listens to all of it, so whatever.
Does she? Oh,
No,
bless her.
I don't know if she actually listens. She probably does. She's my mom, you know.
Oh, your mom's
Moms
awesome.
are good like that.
Moms are good like that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Until next week when we do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long, Grace.
See you next week.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's